Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 2. I'm really excited about this. We got so much love from our first episode. I was really impressed. I was really touched. And now I'm like, we got to step it up. So before we jump into it, how are your weeks? How did things go for you?
My week was crazy, hellacious, and I can't believe it. I don't know if there's not a lot of people who are from Oakland that might be watching, but if you live in Oakland, there is some straight drama happening at city council. There always is. And I always say it's like must-see TV because it's like coming straight out of television, the drama that happens. And so that's what I had to deal with, city council drama all week. And to be able to turn that off and watch General Hospital was great. But other than that, I'm doing pretty well. I don't know how I can keep my sanity and have such a great sense of humor. It was because I watched General Hospital and then Disney. That's it.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, how do weeks even go in this pandemic, pantomime, pandesal, like whatever it is that we're living in right now? But I just was in herb class all weekend, so I'm in addition to being a General Hospital podcaster, I'm also training to be a clinical herbalist, and I really feel like those skill sets complement each other. So that was fun, and it's definitely a different headspace, so I'm transitioning into that right now. And what's really helped me with that preparation is that I got back on Twitter after years of absence on Monday following our podcast, and I had to start over from 0 to 0 followers because I deleted my old account. I had decided in about 2018 or 19 that my thoughts from 2015 that were just hanging out at the top of my Twitter were not what I wanted to lead with in the world. Not that I was saying anything too wild in 2015. It's just like not what I would say now. But it's actually been really great because my old Twitter account was like so movement, like serious, like intense, and like me getting into a lot of fights with people. And right now, to be honest, it's just General Hospital. I'm sure I'll like tweet about Grey's Anatomy and all that, Station 19, our faves, when that goes back on the air. But it's just like nice to have a little space to shout into the void. And, now I have 18 followers. So it's like, I actually enjoy the process more with 18 followers than I did with like 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
So that about sums up my week. What about you, Tracy?
I don't even remember the week, to be honest. I'm just like, I feel like I do a walk and I every day, which has been good for my mental health and my headspace, and I watch General Hospital. And then I do something at work, but I'm not really sure. It's mostly just Zoom, one Zoom to another. Me kind of ranting and raving, people being like, that's a good idea. And then I have no idea what I said after I'm done. So that's just where I am. And just so funny that you brought up the pandemic, because I feel like most people don't know that we're still in one. So that's that always. And it also, and like sometimes it was something that Sandra said, like when we were watching General Hospital this week, when I was like talking about just one of the things that I miss when I go back and watch old videos is like all of these scenes where everybody is together, or just like the kind of things that you wouldn't normally imagine, like people just having like throwaway scenes that don't have to be so like plot driven, but could be character driven. And Sandra was like, oh yeah, some of these people are probably potted together. And I was like, oh yeah, like that's still happening because the world sometimes forgets that there's a pandemic, but thankfully General Hospital is not forgotten. So yeah, that's been, yeah, but glad to be here. Been looking forward to this all week as we were watching. So yeah. So I can hop into a recap of the week. Is that good?
Yes, please.
Okay. Jordan wakes up and shares some strangely emotional scenes with Curtis and TJ. She is shipped to Albany for treatment for her renal failure, but not before we find out that she heard Portia's confession that she needs to tell Trina something about her father. Jordan assumes that she means something about Taggart, not about paternity, and so Portia just goes with it. And we find out that the emotional scenes were because the actress that is playing Jordan is exiting the show. So goodbye to her, because I thought she did a great job. Meanwhile, also at the hospital, BLQ pushes Maxie to ask Austin to Carly and Jason's wedding. After a few false starts and some awkward exchanges, Austin finally agrees. We then go to a Cassadine off, which I'm calling it, with Valentine on one side and Nicholas and Spencer on the other. Jabs are thrown, but the ultimate blow comes from Spencer telling Valentine, at least I know who my father is. After that, Trina lets Josh in on the Victor secret. So we move to the Metro Court again for the Josh Spencer showdown, which was like less of a showdown and more of a dress down. Because Josh made sure that you knew that she was both the child of Carly and of Jax. It was like the mixture of the messy and the petty. And she tore into Spence, if you will, and let him know if she had to choose between him and Trina, she's choosing Trina. And the decision isn't even a tough one. Spencer's takeaway, wait, Trina likes me? Of all the takeaways, that was Spencer's. So traveling to Nixon Falls, which is either really close if you're Jax or really far if you're Valentine and Anna, we have Peter show up and tell Nina that her Costa Rica trick didn't work, and he knew that was an ambush by Liesl. He makes a call to Valentine to see if there are any updates on the baby, and she has a forced conversation, asks him about living in the Metro Court, which Valentine obviously lives at the Quartermains, and lets him go. Valentine knows something is wrong, and he and Anna decide to go on the slowest road trip known to man from Port Charles to Nixon Falls. Phyllis shows up to the Tano, pulls out that thing, and Peter ends up tying up Phyllis and Nina. We find that the Tano gets engulfed in flames. Peter does his cartoon villain thing, and Sonny and Jax show up, save Phyllis and Nina. Looks like things might not go right for Mike, aka Sonny, but they do. And in that time, Jax picks up the phone and calls Maxie to warn her about Peter, but she doesn't pick up because she's at Carly and Jason's wedding. Apparently, Jax does not know how to text. With no help from the Nixon Falls Fire Department, Sonny escapes the flames. At the hospital, he tells Nina he knows his name is not Mike and he remembers everything. Miss Wu of the Five Families whispers a warning to Jason in the receiving line before heading to the reception. We see the heads of the Bushima and Novak family discussing their plans, initiated by the still incarcerated Cyrus Renaud. The episode ends and the week ends with a car bomb explosion. Quite a week. That's still the same day that we were talking about last week. What was your take on the week?
My God. There are several things that I loved about this week. I love the Valentine, Spencer, and Nick interaction. And I kind of felt like Valentine needs to go and kick their ass because they were just being assholes for no reason. I felt maybe it's just been, kind of building up for a while. I mean, Nicholas has been on the canvas for a while with Valentine in its presence. So Nicholas shouldn't have reacted to him the way that he did. But I think, he was just kind of trying to, just be in there with Spencer, who obviously was reacting for the first time. But I still felt like they're being assholes and he was trying to be gracious, and even though he was needling them just a little. But I still feel like I almost wish that he's the one that finds out that Spencer was stalking Ava and Nicholas so he can totally just, blow it all up. Because I want him, Like, I know that he, came and took their money and, and their home and everything, and that's sad, but I feel like Valentine's more classy than they are. And so I want him to come out on top. So, but I love Spencer. I do. I love Nicholas. I do. But I think I'm in love with Valentine more right now. So that's how I feel. The other thing was the Sonny and Mike scenes made me cry. When Mike said, if I had a choice, it would always be to remember, I was crying. When Dream Carly turned around to face him, I was crying. So those scenes were awesome for me. I also loved it when Peter outed Nina's spot. I mean, in front of Phyllis, because he's like, Nina's known all along who Mike was. He knows his wife and his kids. And I was just like, yes, Peter, that's the only way that you're useful to me right now. And you came through. So thank you. I love that. And I loved Jax's face when he found out Nina knew about Peter. I don't know if you guys follow me on social media, but I put out that meme because it was hilarious. And but obviously the ultimate scene was My Name Is Not Mike, It's Sonny. And it just kudos to, the Sonny, the character Michael Bernard. He was just like Maurice Bernard. It was like two different people. And you can tell he was Sonny just by the look, that intense look that he has, where he's like staring her down, like death is going like just through his eyeballs. And it was amazing. And it was like, ooh. And the theme, like Y&R, Young and the Restless, they have this awesome kind of like background theme music when Victor does something evil, like the violins and the wind instruments kind of crescendo a little bit when he's in his Victor mode. And I kind of feel like that theme music should have been there because it was perfect. But I also made me think about what it was like for the actors, because obviously they don't have theme music when they're acting. It's all probably really silent. And I just imagine how awkward it would have been, because he did not speak very fast. He paused. He's like, my name is not Mike, stare. You known it all along, stare. And I remember everything, stare. And I mean everything. It's just like stare. And so it was just like, what's he gonna say next? It was just like really, like, it must have been super awkward, but really intense. And imagine it just in that silence. But we had the background music to kind of hype us up, but it must have been really intense, just them saying the dialogue without any music in the background. So yeah, the wedding, it was negligible for me, but I would like to note the fashion. So if we have some time, I would like to tell you my fashion critiques.
We always have time for fashion critiques. That's first of all. Second of all, when you brought up like Sonny and the Mike transformation, that like stuck with me, because the thing about Sonny is Sonny's gonna still be kind of gentlemanly. So he was like, "You all right? All right, so let's talk about it because you've been knowing who I was." Like it went like that.
Like,
you know what I'm saying?
Let's establish you're okay, and then I'm gonna kill you right now.
Right. So I'm just interested to see how that like works out. Sandra, let's talk about your faves, and then we'll talk about fashion. We'll sneak that fashion in there.
Yes, I just want to tag onto that, and like who stares and pauses better than Maurice Bernard. I mean, a legend. We love you, Mo. Oh, so many favorites. I also really loved the Peter reveal of Nina, because like it was so extra petty. Like he was about to kill them, like literally burn them alive. And like, hold on, let me pause for a second and just like make this as uncomfortable as possible. So it's the most I've ever liked Peter, I try to be as affirming in my discussion of people's performances as I can. But I can say, I think Peter did a good job. I think Wes Ramsey did a good job. It was entertaining. It was campy. I know that we'll be continuing to see him, I'm sure, for a while, and I hope that like he's able to hit that sweet spot more. And you know, who better than to tell Nina about like her wild foolishness than someone who is as wild and foolish as Kier. So I appreciated that, and I hear you on the Valentine Nicholas Spencer dynamic. I mean, I love that scene. Loved it. It's like, oh my God, here are all my problematic faves. And Nicholas, you know, Nicholas was there too. And I say that because I'm a longtime Nicholas fan. Like I brought up his arrival last episode as like a really keystone, important, like early memory of GH for me. That was really important. But what kind of modeling for Spencer is this? Like, no wonder your child is like this. Like, why escalate that in that moment? Like, why go for the jugular? I mean, it was clearly like a moment from a plot place of like, we wanted Nicholas and Spencer to like have a moment of connection, and clearly this is the only way they know how to connect because they're Cassadines. And also to see like Spencer's, like, this is like Spencer's dark side is real. Like he is vicious, and he is you know, he is one to follow his like quote unquote baser instincts if they're available to him. And then also seeing Esme kind of reinforce that and having that creepy moment where she was like, that was hot, and I was like, please no. So I also it made me curious about Valentine's paternity. We still don't, like, right, as Spencer so clearly pointed out, we don't know who his father is. We know his mother's Helena. And with it just makes me curious about that, and makes me wonder, could it be Victor? Not Spencer Victor, but the actual Victor Cassadine. So that just like created some curiosity for me. And in general, like, I'm always here for like more Cassadine messiness. Speaking of, my like ultimate favorite moment was, of course, Joss just dressing Spencer the fuck down. It was so satisfying. It also brought me back to like, this is like also the kind of drama that 18-year-olds have. You know, like I remember having conversations like that with like friends who were dating each other, or like whatever, like some kind of drama came up, except for it wasn't like at a 4-star hotel, it was at like Denny's. And just that, like, you know what, we've been friends for a long ass time. I know all about why you do what you do, and you're not fucking with my girl. Like, I just thought that was really it's a moment we don't get to see a lot in soap operas, like young women like choosing each other over their relationships and like their proximity to men. So I felt like that was just like a moment where I was just like cheering the whole time. Like every time they cycled back onto the scene, I was like, get him, Joss, get him. And at the same time, like, I also love Spencer. He is also like one of my problematic faves. And so it both, like, there's something about the way that they're handling his storyline that I really love, where you're both rooting for him and you're rooting against him. Like, you know his history, and you also like want him to be held accountable, and you want him to be caught, and you want him to be told off, but you also want him to be redeemed. And because you can see like these moments of like vulnerability, like when he gets like so excited that Trina might have feelings for him. Like, what was her exact wording? Like, do you have a recording of it? How can she like me? She just told me that I wasn't handsome. So I appreciate that kind of balance being struck in his character. Yeah, those were probably like my favorite top of mind moments. And I think just like overall, I felt like the week was one of the better weeks that we've had in a while. Like, there were some like sticky points, but overall, like the pace felt a lot better and it was just more engaging than it has been.
I to your point about Spencer, I almost wonder, because it is like the way he's been brought in, the way he's been folded in, the way the storytelling, the pacing has been done really well. And to be honest, some of the other stuff has not been. And so I'm wondering, like, is there like a different sort of people who's writing for like the teens versus like the adults, and they're just meshing it? Because there is something that's being done really, really well with the Spencer storyline that isn't happening in other places on the canvas. Tanya, I'm sorry, I think I leapfrogged you. What were you gonna say?
I wanted to comment on the whole Spencer Esme dynamic, and then it reminded me a lot of Ava and Nicholas. And for some reason, I love it when Ava and Nicholas are evil together, but I can't stand it that Esme is trying to be evil with Spencer. And maybe it's because I want Spencer to be with Trina. And so, like, that maybe it, but it just like the comparison is totally different for me. I mean, because yeah, I don't know. I think it's
Yeah.
probably it. It's probably it because I just don't want Esme to be with Spencer.
No, I don't think that's it though, because I think Ava and Esme are like very different characters, and like their relationships to Spencer and Nicholas are very different. Like Ava and Nicholas are like co-conspirators in like a really true sense. Like they are kind of like on a more or less even playing field, and like versus Spencer and Esme, like Esme's clearly running the show. Like not to let Spencer off the hook at all, but he is not the brains of the operation. Like she is pulling his strings and manipulating him and isolating him from people who like actually would maybe set him in a better direction. Because he's like been on the verge of confessing like several times, and every time she interrupts him or like pulls him back from it. So I think that actually totally makes sense, that there's like a parallel there, but
Yeah.
the missing part is empathy and humanity.
And she has like an ulterior motive too. This is like there's something else going on here. And I'm really curious. I'm really curious about what it is, but I also just don't want her to be in Spencer's orbit at all. But hey, she's a good obstacle to Sprina, so that's fine. Yeah.
You almost remember, like, I think that the thing that was really good about the Valentine, Nicholas, Spencer like dynamic in that scene was that you remember, oh yeah, Spencer's a Cassadine. And so in other, like, if we didn't have a Sprina, I'm not saying that I would root for them, but it was almost like before that, it was kind of like Esme and Spencer don't make a lot of sense. Like he really clearly seemed like he was more into Trina than he was into her. But then like you see that, you're like, oh yeah, he's a Cassadine. This actually does make sense. Like this relationship does make sense for him.
Yeah, it gives you a little insight as to like how did these two end up together? Here's how.
I forget I'm on mute, but yeah, they're together because he's rich and he's part of that world, and Esme is just a hot mess.
And he's a Cassadine, and they like the cray cray. They like the cray cray because they are the cray cray.
Yeah.
I would say like related as far as like my favorite moment for the week, in a roundabout way. So like I don't think it's been a secret that I have not been the biggest fan of like Wes Ramsey's performance as Peter. And it's not even that I don't like Wes Ramsey. I actually just think it was a miscast. I think he is like theatrical in a way, whereas to like some of the Cassadines are like theatrical, but they're like campy, and that's not like Wes is like, you know, like I could see him doing Shakespeare if we're being honest. But this week he did give us some gems that y'all talked about. And one of the other things that he did that I laughed at is when he was walking out of the Tano, he like had like Tano matches. It was so dumb. And I loved it. And that's actually the kind of soapy foolishness that I tune in for. I actually think that what would have been more appealing for Wes and for Peter is if I think the part of the problem was that he was like straddling as a character two worlds. So it was like he was like trying to be good for Maxie, even though like he had all these other things like happening. And what I think would have been more interesting is if they would have figured out a way to like redeem him. And like even the stuff he had done to Jason, even the kind of evil stuff he had going on, like he would have done something, and then Sonny and Jason would have owed him, and then he could have just like gotten out of off under that, and then been able to like show himself struggling with being Anna's son, then finding out he's not Anna's son, like being Faison's son. I think that would have been more appropriate for him. It is the kind of straddling between whether you're good or bad, and then going straight into like villain that was hard for me to catch on with him. And I said this to Sandra. I think that the guy who played Shiloh would have been an interesting Peter. Because he had that thing that was like, like a cult leader, like that was like, he was like a ridiculous character, and like Shiloh was ridiculous, but then you almost forgot because sometimes he would have normal conversation. Like the relationship he had with Oscar didn't come across as creepy in the way that the relationship he had with Christina was. And so in a roundabout way, I think that Wes Ramsey, like, because like the soapiness, he actually like just leaned right all the way into it, was like a real highlight for me for this week. And something that we didn't have on our kind of agenda, but I do want to get into is the fashion. So Tanya, tell us, what do you think about the fashion?
So I just have like my top three, and actually the top one is more of a tie. So obviously I had to give a nod to Carly's gold dress, but really the flower arrangements was what got me, because I kind of feel like it's a tie between Carly's dress and the flower arrangements, because I love the lilies, I love the boutonniere, and so I was just like, okay, this is awesome. I love the flower arrangement. But the number two was Diane's dress. Diane's dress was amazing and I loved it. And then number three for me was Olivia's dress, because Olivia looks amazing in everything she wears, but that yellow dress was just like, girl, I want your workout routine and I need it right now. So I just thought, those were the tops for me. I mean, Jocelyn's dress was pretty. It was a bridesmaid dress. She's a teenager and it fit her well, blah, blah, blah. But it wasn't like Olivia, like that was, she looked gorgeous. And Diane's dress, Diane just comes in all nonchalant, like, yes, I'm the lawyer, but yes, I look amazing in this dress. So, and so it was great. And it's unexpected, because you wouldn't necessarily expect a mobster's lawyer to come in looking better than some of the guests, but that's what happened. And so, those were my, I felt like Willow's dress wasn't necessarily fitting with the formality of the wedding. I
It looked like a curtain.
It was just like, it was like a summer dress, like she was going to maybe a summer picnic or a barbecue, but not for the wedding, I don't think. Yeah, those were everybody else I was just like, it's okay. But those stood out to me.
It was Olivia's dress for me, and everything about Olivia, everything. Tracy was with me when I was losing my mind. Like, I was like, Olivia, take me away. Like, I'm tearing up right now. Like, I was just like, I for real, I don't know what happened in her scenes. She was so distractingly hot. Just like the MILF of my dreams. Like, Olivia, I love you.
She brought in the fear. She was pissed off at Austin, and she came with straight attitude. And I saw on Twitter, I think she was responding to somebody, and she was like, I wasn't even trying to be all that angry, but I guess because she had some straight attitude with him. She was not having his little diagnosis about her son. And she was just like,
and it enhanced the look for right. Sure. Like, the anger was part of it for me. Like, I was like, whoo, like,
Like,
cool off like literally, like I'm getting hot right now.
I mean, if you think about it, I'm like Ned and Alexis versus Olivia. Like, really?
It's not even.
Like,
but
sorry.
that's also like classic, like white man. His like wife's way hotter than him, so he's gonna like hook up with his ex, who is, you know,
Right.
a nice looking lady. Which, I mean, nobody is Olivia.
Nobody's Olivia. Like she is. Woo. I would say it was also the way like Carly's dressed, but the way Laura Wright was wearing that dress. And I appreciate that about GH, which is also like what frustrates me sometimes, because they have like shapelier women. Like, I mean, Olivia is like, you know, like traditionally thin or whatever, but like Carly's curvy, Laura Wright's curvy. So it's like a little frustrating that they don't know how to dress Maxie or Brooklyn, because I didn't like Maxie's dress. And
Right.
I think that if so much of her like personality hadn't been based on like the Maxinista, like she's whatever, it wouldn't be so ridiculous. But like, get that girl at Torrid, get that girl at like something. She might not even be Torrid size, but like, it's just there's something with the way that they're addressing her, and it's wild to like compare her against these older women who are dressing very well.
Right.
Because Carly and Olivia like have traditionally been bringing it. In all of their scenes. You know, there's always some near misses or whatever with some of the things that they wear, but for the most part, you see them. Like, you remember when Carly walked in to like take her place at the mob boss seat with that white dress on?
Fierce.
I
was
like, so there's clearly like people who know how to do some fashion stuff there, and I'm just like, it is a little frustrating to me to see them not do it for characters who they should do it for.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that they're just trying to get Maxie into this mommy settled down mode. I don't know, but
I don't know.
Working.
It's not. She wore a Mother of the Bride dress.
Yeah, Kristen Storm's dress is nice on her own. Like, when you're on her Instagram account, there's like half the stuff that she buys I want to buy. So I don't know why GH is dressing her the way they are right now. I mean, if they just let, you know, Kirsten dress herself, then she would be fine. But now they're just like making her feel like just dowdy, and it's just weird because she's a fashionista.
I'd also say that's like why the Willow dress was so ridiculous. Like, you're gonna walk up in here in that curtain when Olivia is wearing that yellow thing? Like, are you crazy? Like, that's wild. And I also appreciate that the actress is getting so much love from that dress on Twitter. Like, everything was like, oh my God, but that dress. Yeah. And like, yeah, so that's, I mean, you know, they know what to do. I'm just really curious as to why they're not doing it for everybody.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if it is really character driven or not. I don't know, but they didn't hit the mark with Maxie. They could have done a lot better with her.
Yeah, it's disappointing because that was like one of the things I actually used to really look forward to back when she was working at Crimson, like early days when she was an assistant, was like, what look is Maxie gonna wear today? Like, she had that really cute asymmetrical haircut, and like I really wanted it, but my hair wasn't that. Yeah, and then when they finally put Brooklyn in like a swimsuit cover-up situation when she was at the Metro Court with Maxie and it wasn't a blazer, I like lost my mind. I was like, finally. Finally, like, can we just cut the blazers in half? Like, I know y'all are really attached to the blazers, but like, can every other outfit not be a blazer? I'm tired of the blazers. Everyone's tired of them.
And these people are rich. So like, let's figure out how to make that, because I think like if you think about a show like Schitt's Creek, where like the outfits were part of the story. And I know that like obviously Daytime does not have the same budget as like, you know, some other shows, but there are some things that can be done. Like, it actually is kind of distracting to say these people are really rich and then have them like not look that way.
They got more of a budget than we do, and we look good.
Sure do. Got my ring light popping. GH, where's your ring light?
I wanted to mention this, and this is kind of a side comment, but I have been stalking Ava's nail polish routine for a while, and I finally found it. So you know how she kind of has the metal colors going on, and I was like, dude, how do you do that? I want that. How do you do that? But like, but she would never respond. Like the actress, she would never respond, and I finally figured it out. So if you guys are ever wondering how to get this color, it's Beetles chrome powder. You can find them on Amazon. And I do this myself. It's amazing.
They look really good.
Thank you. I got a compliment when I went to the store today. I've never seen that nail color before. Where do you do? I was like, oh, thanks. And then
I'm gonna need you to send me some links after this.
Oh yeah.
I've also been eyeing her nails.
Like
they're amazing.
And they're totally Ava. And I was just like, I want that. I want that. You know, I don't have her attitude and her, you know, dress, but I want her nails. So
Maura West forever. My God, what a gem.
Yeah.
So what do you want to see more of in the upcoming weeks?
I definitely want to see more of, you know, the Mike Sonny transition. I want to see if he's going to actually be a little bit of both or just all Sonny. And I kind of feel like right now he's going to focus on being Sonny. But once he finds out about Carly and Jason, then he might be like, whoa, okay. He might be hurt and then he might run to Nina. But I think Nina is not going to be ready for the Sonny bipolarness. And we're gonna see that, I think, on Monday when he flashes on her and is like, try to stop me, you know, because I think that might freak her out a bit. I don't think she's going to be ready. And only Carly and Jason really know how to handle him when he's in that mode. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays off. But that's, you know, my interest in the week. And maybe Sprina. Yeah. Oh, and then I want to find out what's going on with Liesel. Like, why is she just got kidnapped and then that's it? Is she going on vacation or something? I mean, what's going on with that? That's what I want her to be found. And I want her to be able to get her revenge. I kind of feel like this is what I talked about last week and it just didn't happen. So I'm bringing it up again. But yeah, that's what I want.
Don't we all? Like, I deeply miss Liesel. It's been like a couple weeks at least since we've seen her. And even if I'm not anticipating her getting rescued anytime soon, but I'm ready for more of her and messy ass Victor. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
it's like he was on for like one day and then that's it.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Mr. Sheffield? I need it.
Yes. I was very confused about like the layout of the room and why people just kept appearing after the door was closed and her scene with him. But you know what? I'm not gonna let it keep me up at night because I would never sleep as a GH watcher. Yeah, I want more of that. I want to know more about Victor, what he's up to, who else on the canvas he's connected to. I feel like I also talked about this last week of just like what's happening here. Like there's like Drew is like he put it together this week that he's probably being held by Cassadine. Also Drew like probably has his memories back. Like he's been alluding to things that only like the old Drew would know. So I want to know more about that, even though I am still struggling with Cameron Matheson as Drew. And this is me being very diplomatic. I'm having a really hard time with it. I just really, really love Billy Miller, and Cameron Matheson is still Ryan Lavery to me. So, and I know a lot of like people have that problem when they have soap opera actors from other shows that they have a deep history with, but that's just how I feel about it. But I am interested to see that plot move along. And I want more Terry and Britt. I really like their connection. Also, I think that there's some really great chemistry there. And also, I'm not the only person that's noticed that. So I appreciate, shout out to my Terry and Britt shippers and also my Harmony and Alexis shippers. Yes, I know it's problematic, but is it any more problematic than anyone else that Alexis has ever been with? And I
It's
really
probably
feel
one
like
of the least problematic things that Alexis could do, to be honest. And I'm into it.
And I think that Alexis really fits, and you know, this is me saying this as a queer person, I'm allowed to say this. She really fits the profile for a late in life, like queer relationship. I'm just saying, like, I think it could be really healing for her. And it would be the most I'd be interested in her storyline in a while. So I'm putting that out into the universe. I'm just gonna keep speaking my marginalized queer couplings into the universe, and eventually someone's gonna pick it up. I want more Miss Wu, the secret like MVP of the week. I think she also noticed Carly's looks, and you know what? Fashion is a great connector. And I'm also like always eager for another Asian character on the show. Like right now, the only Asian actor that's featured is Cassandra James, and she's Chinese. So, and I'm also eager for like Asian characters who are not working at the hospital. And she has a family connection to Brad. Brad has a family connection. I can't remember the exact, I meant to go look this up before.
I think he was like some sort of like son and then just did not go into the family business. I think he was like a son of that family.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna bring up. Yeah.
I would love for Mrs. Wu like to be more featured, for us to actually find out what her first name is. We can stop calling her that. And then maybe it could be like breadcrumbs for Brad to come back, because I love messy ass Brad and I miss him. I know Lucas isn't really on the show anymore. I don't know why they got rid of all their queer characters.
But he can come back.
At a time when other soaps are also like amping up, it seems like their queer storylines. I think GH is just, I don't know what they've lost track of things.
I mean, she can like, I think she can like make a deal with Jason, be like, look, I helped you out. Can you get my son out of jail? Or something like that. Yeah, I think that would be a way to get him back on canvas.
Oh, I like that. I like the way your brain thinks. Yes. And then I have one last more of Vanna. They've been on this road trip for forever. I feel cheated. I feel lied to, because they were in the Monday episode and then they were like on the road the whole rest of the week, like stopping to like go see these falls that are apparently around Nixon Falls. Like, do they have a picnic? Do they do some wine tasting? Like, where are they? I thought that they would at least be on like the end of Friday's episode. So I feel like I was teased with Vanna content, but I did not get to I do not feel satiated. I mean, maybe I never will, because I do love Valentina and Anna so much, but I need them to make that up to us this week. What about you, Tracy? What was your favorite moment?
Yeah, it was like, what, y'all have hit everything. I actually don't look, no notes. It was perfect. It was perfect. All I wrote down was Valentina and Anna. I feel very cheated. Where they at? People was riding in and out of Nixon Falls all the time. They're there like quickly, and here goes Valentina and Anna taking the scenic route. Stopped in Pine Valley, said what's up to Erica Kane. Come on, let's get there. Let's get there. What do y'all want to see less of? I have a list.
I mean, I love Carly. I do want to know if they made it out of the bombing. I think they did. I think it was a little obvious that they kind of made it out, but I don't like, there was a comment on Twitter where they said that the only way that they could have gotten the audience to watch the wedding was because it was interplaced with with the whole Sunny Mike thing. And that was true for me. Like, I think I watched the episode twice, because I watched it and then fast forwarded all the scenes other than the Mike scenes. And then I went back and watched the wedding scenes. And so I kind of feel like that's how it is for me. I want them to focus on the Mike scenes a lot more. But because I don't want Jason and Carly to consummate. I do not want that to happen. So I don't want to see it. Maybe we won't see it because of, pandemic, but I don't want them to have a love scene. That would be too much for me to take. I just don't think I could do it.
I don't want to see it. It's killing me. It's like when people are like, what am I going to tell my kids? I don't want them to see this.
I don't want them to see that mess. But I mean, I love Carly and Jason as friends. That's how I want them. And I want them to stay that way. I don't want to see them be, no. Especially now that Sonny's awake. I would be so hurt. If they do a replay of Sonny walking in on Jason and Carly, I would be pissed. Do not want to see that.
I hate to break it to you, but I think you're gonna see all of that. Like, I really hate to break it to you.
No, because I think that someone had showed that scene again, and I saw it when Carly walks down the stairs, and Sonny is like, this is what's happened, and and I think he would just be so hurt. But then at the same time, I don't think he would. I don't know how Sonny would react. It would be just so devastating. That's the only thing I can focus on. That's the only thing I really don't want to see. Sorry, that's it.
Yeah, I on a high level, my answer is whatever was happening on Wednesday, less of. It was like the one day where I was like, what happened this day? It was very filler, because like Monday and Tuesday were pretty interesting, and then Thursday and Friday with the constant juxtaposition between the fire and the wedding, which was wonderful. I do wonder though how Jarly shippers still like were celebrating the wedding, because it was like constantly being spliced with like inferno and like death and like all this stuff, and I was like, y'all, if someone was doing this to my ship, I would be pissed. I would be like, oh no, like my couple is doomed. So but yeah, like whatever was happening on Wednesday was like, it just felt like filler. It felt like the wedding could have been a day shorter. Honestly, the wedding could have been a day, but I understand why they spread it out the way that they did, because they wanted to juxtapose it with the fire and like have like the a good amount of time with the Mike Sonny scenes, which were very sweet and like soapy and emotionally satisfying. And I would say also just like, I am ready. Like, I know we have some more fallout for like the Sonny, Jason, Carly storylines. Like that much is clear, and like Nina and all of that. Like, there's going to be like we're going to see like a lot of different people's reactions to him being back, and then like he also is going to have to like find out about Jason and Carly and have his reaction. But I actually really hope that they kind of put the story on ice for a little while. It's taken up so much bandwidth on the show, and I also see them doing this with other storylines recently, where like the big climax happens and then they kind of like chill out on those characters, like Michael, Chase, and Willow, for example. Because I think it's taken up so much bandwidth that the other storylines aren't progressing in a way that's like super interesting. And I think it would give a chance for the other storylines to just like breathe and expand more, which is very needed, because this is a very unpopular storyline to take up so much space. And so I'm glad that it's moving along, and I am actually genuinely interested to see what happens next. And I could use a little palate cleanser so that I can be more appreciative and a little bit less impatient and critical.
Yes, I can agree with that, as long as I don't see Jason and Carly consummate. Like, if they just take a breather the whole thing and just let Sonny make his way back to Port Charles and it takes a minute, that's fine. I just don't want to have a honeymoon with Jason and Carly.
I don't want that either. I'll leave it at that. I won't speak into existence what I actually think is going to happen with that. So I hear you. I honor you.
Whew. I I think we're gonna see it, and I hate it. I would say I have a bunch of stuff I'd rather see less of. So whatever is happening with Drew, I know that it's always really hard to like reintroduce a character in a way that's like interesting, but what they're doing is like actually taking forever, and it's extremely not interesting. There are not stakes because we know that Drew's not actually in danger. And so we just like basically see Cameron Matheson getting like beat up with his shirt off. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is the point? When actually it could be more interesting. Like we could actually see like who else is being held there. We could actually like see a Cassadine or see somebody talking about it. I think that like I think that whatever it was, that weirdness of like Dante and Sam know that Drew's out there, but they're like kind of cute playing baseball. Like that kind of stuff is just like, it takes away the urgency. Like the urgency needs to be on like both ends, which is like Drew trying to get out and people trying to find him. And that's like not what we're having. I also know that like Jason and Drew didn't leave on the best terms, and that like, you know, whatever, but it's just like really difficult to believe that like Carly and Jason wouldn't want to know that Drew was out there. It's just like little things like that. I'm like, is this like bad? Is this like the writing? Is this because like people can't cross over? Like what is actually happening? And then I also want them to show less of them telling me how good characters are together, and actually like do it. So like Charlie will never be my ship, like ever, right? Like that's just not my jam. I'm like an OG Jay Sammer. I get that. But that doesn't mean I can't see when things are interesting. Like J Sam has been my ship, but like I understood like what they were doing with Liaison and was actually really interested in it at the time. And so like give me a Charlie story that doesn't really feel forced, right? Like I'm glad Olivia was like said something like, yo, Sunny hasn't even been gone for a year. Like that was the only person, like I mean, and then you had like a little bit of shade from like Monica and a little bit of shade from Bobby, but it wasn't enough. Like this idea that like little redhead Michael always wanted Carly and Jason to be together. Don't like, you actually don't have to do that. You don't have to force things. And I think that like traditionally in soaps, what has been the most interesting about ships is that things weren't forced, that you were able to like have people actually go head to head with each other in a way, because like everybody wasn't reinforcing one way or another. And so I think that we saw a little bit of the same thing with Michael and Willow, which made it like really uninteresting for me towards the end, where it was like everybody's just like, oh yeah, y'all are cute together. Yeah, it's okay what you did to Chase because you were in love and there was nothing else you can do. And they just have to stop doing that. You know, Carly and Jason have a backstory, and I'm almost glad that Jason and Carly are finally together, if I'm being honest, because he could stop ruining other relationships and other women in service of his friendship to Carly. But it's just really, really, really forced. And yeah, go ahead.
Did you see that Twitter thread that someone did with videos of Dylan Cash, the redheaded Michael, and all the scenes that he did to get his parents back together? They showed the scene where he was trying to bribe Sam to get out of town. They showed the scene where they locked him, like Sunny and Carly together. And they showed the scene where he faked his kidnapping, like all the things that he did to keep his parents together. And I just thought it was hilarious because they couldn't find anything where he was like, yeah, I want Jason and Carly to be together. It was always about Sunny and Carly. It never did anything. Yeah, so it was funny.
Nobody keeps receipts like soap fans. Like we will keep receipts for 25 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's like the struggle, because I also think that there could have been something compelling with Michael like struggling with it. Like I love Jason and I'm actually glad he's with my mom, because if it wasn't dad, like this makes sense. Like the three of them were so tight, and so it makes sense they would like have found this like love with each other. It just like nothing actually compelling was going on. It just came out of nowhere. And also, very side note, I've been going back down like a Michael rabbit hole. Bring back more interesting Michael. Michael is so muted right now. he's like, so like, look at me, I'm wholesome. Michael took Avery from Sunny and sat at his house and was like, I think I'm gonna call her AJ Quartermain. Like, that is like, you know what I'm saying? Like, Michael actually is an interesting character, and whatever. I'm interested to see if they'll do some of that when Nina comes back, and if like Nina will be a point of tension between him and Willow. Because like we actually like we went from like I'm gonna call her AJ Quartermain to like Michael just handing Austin over like shares of ELQ. Like I don't like it.
I mean, we saw a little bit of it when he had an attitude with Jax over the blackmailing, but I kind of feel like he needs to come full throttle with, I'm pissed at you and I'm going to take revenge on you, because that's something that little Michael would have done. Totally. He had a lot of shenanigans up in his sleeve. He was very comparable to Spencer when Spencer was a little boy. And, now he's all straight-laced Michael, and it's just like, boring. And I'm wondering if the actor is seeing that and is feeling like maybe I should bring out my bad side. I don't know.
I mean, show us that you are Carly and Sunny's child, and AJ.
AJ
was like just a giant mess.
Yeah,
an incompetent
Quartermain, Corinthos, Spencer. Like, let's bring it.
Yeah, like they're trying to make him into Lila. And even I think Lila had a little bit of bite to her.
Lila was infinitely more interesting than Michael.
Yeah. So
for sure.
So like we're talking about actors. Let's like shift. So Maurice Bernard has his show State of Mind. And so he does interviews with like other soap actors. So like there's been a lot of folks from GH, but there's also been some folks from like Days and other soaps. And so he recently did one that I think has been taking over like the timelines with Laura Wright. And so they talked about the Sunny Smike storyline in Nixon Falls, and just curious to hear like y'all take on it. Curious to hear what your take on it is. And Tanya, I know that you watched it, so if you could just explain what it was for people who haven't.
So he did his interview with Laura Wright, and he sold it as Laura Wright talking about her divorce and then the loss of her parents, which in of itself is really compelling. It gives you another side of Laura Wright to understand. But like the first 10 minutes, they actually talked about what's going on in their current storylines. And it was interesting to see that Maurice was saying that he actually enjoys playing Mike and that he does not like playing Sunny. And that was a little shocking. But then I started thinking about it because it takes a lot of, emotional energy to play someone as problematic as Sunny. And that's what he said. He doesn't like his energy and his darkness, because I imagine him playing that can mess with his own bipolar issues. And so he said it's very hard for him to play that, but then he's so good at it. I mean, it's just like, and what was funny is that he said he didn't like it. And then after the podcast airs, on his personal social media, he's like, Sunny's back. This is going to happen. Played some really great scenes. You guys are going to love it, and all this other stuff. And then at the before, he's like, yeah, I don't like playing Sunny. So it's weird because it makes me think that, maybe he's contracted to say all this stuff about the great scenes you guys are coming up and you guys should be excited and playing all that stuff. Maybe he has to do that, but maybe deep down, it's just like really difficult and hard for him to continue playing such a dark and angry character. So I felt it was really interesting to hear him say that. But yeah, and it's sad because I'm just like, I know it's hard for you, and as a person, as a human being, I don't want you to have to do that. But at the same time, it's like no one else can do it the same way that he can. So I feel like weird saying that you can't stop playing Sunny. You have to play Sunny. But I know it's a struggle with your own personal mental health. But yeah, so I'm I'm conflicted about that. So
yeah, that was really it was like a really beautiful insight to hear from him. I mean, I think I respect him so much as like as an actor, and for him to name that, I think is really bold. Like, actually, this part that, I mean, a lot of people would probably kill to play, right? Like, it's a very juicy role. It's like the kind of role that people, like, if you're going to be a soap opera actor, like there's just like such a wealth of material. And yeah, like I really liked what I think it was that Laura brought up, which was that, when you're filming daytime, like you don't get a big long hiatus normally. Like you don't get breaks. You're filming constantly. You're filming scene after scene after scene very quickly, and you don't get to just like detox from your character. And so I thought that was a really nice insight. And I also think that, like, while I'm sure he's like tired of, like he named the heaviness of playing Sonny again, and he also knows that like he can't play Mike forever. It's just not tenable, because one of the parts of the interview was about him and Laura Wright talking, like, pretty frankly about how poorly the storyline has been received, because Laura Wright was like, oh, I think the fans are split, and Maurice was like, honey, no, they're not split. He was like, they're like 90-10 at best, and that's because some people have just started to like, be okay with the storyline.
Yeah.
So I think he's very aware of like the fact that people don't like it. I think what was interesting though was like his and Laura Wright's analysis about why, and it was like very much like, you just don't, people just like their couples together, and then they don't watch if their couple isn't featured, or like they fast forward through. Like Laura Wright kept talking about FFing, which I thought was funny because I never like say it out loud like that. But I felt like that was weird, because yes, like shippers are always the loudest in the fan base, right? Like, and they're quite intense. Like, speaking as like a person who ships from time to time, and has for a long time in various programs. But I think that's like, I'm sure they're hearing from shippers, like especially Carson shippers, a lot, because that's a big part of both of their fan bases. But like, it's not just the shippers, like everyone is not feeling the storyline. And again, I talked about this last week, like I'm not a shipper of any of the characters involved in the storyline. Like I don't have strong attachments to them being with anyone in particular, and I actually don't really like Carson. Like I don't really like Carly and Sonny together that much. But that's not why this isn't working. Like soap opera viewers, like, yeah, like when your ship isn't together, like some people might leave the show, like stop watching. But for the most part, like we have our ships, and like this is our show, this is our program, we have history with it, and we're gonna keep watching. As long as the rest of the content is engaging.
Mm-hmm. I get her point about fast forwarding though, because I do feel like sometimes I'll fast forward through something and then I miss something that's key, even though it's part of the character development. I do understand what she's saying, because sometimes it's those less action oriented kind of like slow scenes that really you can really get into the character. But at the same time, I feel like it's not so much the scene's fault as is the editing, maybe how the editors put the scenes together. And like that's what I said last week. It's like when you juxtapose a slow scene with a really fast scene, I'm gonna fast forward the slow scene because I want to get to the really intense scene. And so it's not the actor's fault, it's not the writer's fault, it's really the editing and how they put those things together. So I don't know, but and it's funny is because I hear a lot of backlash against Laura talking about fast forwarding. I mean, she admits that she fast forwards too, like she can't help it, but she's also trying to make sure that that we as an audience are watching key scenes, so that way we're not missing something that's important. And so it's funny, it's like there's some serious Laura Wright haters out there for no reason whatsoever. And anything that she says, they're like totally over the top. I'm just like, I don't get this hatred of her, but they feel like she's totally running the show and all this good stuff, which I don't necessarily quite believe, but still, whatever.
It's like,
I
how could you
also-
believe Laura Wright is running it if you don't believe Maurice Bernard is? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's so weird.
I would also just like to state for the record, I don't fast forward through anything that I watch. I watch everything, and it's still bad. So, like, I hear what she's saying. And that's why I don't fast forward through things, because if I'm watching something, and I am a detail oriented person, so I want to know all the details, and I've watched it all, every minute of GH, at least for the last few years, and the storyline is bad.
Okay, so I'm not missing anything.
No.
Absolutely not. You're definitely not missing anything. And I think that the other piece of that is that I hear her, and it's not small details that make people not want. I will get into, because I actually did a thing where I pulled out like what I thought, like some of the themes and like things that writers were trying to get to, and like rewrote the storyline. So would love to like do that with y'all. This is me going back to my fanfic days, thinking about my Hufflepuff Harry Potter fanfic in my
Oh my God, I
Team
love
Jake-
that you love Harry Potter. Oh my God. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
my Team Jacob Twilight fanfiction. I know, hot take. Um, so I was thinking, like clearly, like the point of the story was to push Carly and Jason, to give Maurice Bernard a break from playing Sunny, to create some conflict with Nina, and to create high stakes for the mob storyline. So those were the things that I was like, okay, this is what they were trying to do. So here's my rewrite. Like I said last week, there's absolutely no way in 2021 that we could be doing an amnesia storyline in the way that it was being done. That was ridiculous. It's not even soap realistic. Sunny being one state over, us people not posting to the internet being like, have you seen this man? No fingerprints. It's just a no. It's ridiculous. And I could even see like the no fingerprints thing if we had like Sunny getting flashes of being like of a life where he might have had a gun, or like not flashes of his people, but flashes of himself, and being like, oh damn, I might have been a criminal, and this is my way to start over. And so let me go off the grid, right? Like that could have been a way where that made more sense. It still shouldn't have been December to September sense, but it would be more sense, right? And then he could have hid out on the Tano for a little bit. Nina could have come and found him and kept his identity a secret for a few weeks or a month. You still would have had like the stakes of being like, Nina, that was really messed up and it's really unforgivable, but it wouldn't have been as long as it was. And then we could have found out that Lenny had cancer, and that the very best oncologist in the area was Terry at General Hospital. So they could have brought Sunny home with no memories of his family and an unwillingness to get to know them, because we saw that a little bit with Billy Miller's Jason, when he was like, actually, I'm a criminal. I don't want to do none. Like, what are y'all talking about? And like Sunny could have been that and been really, really resistant to his family and like still tried to live his life as Mike. We could have even had him take over Julian's old bar. Like Ava could have like let him do that, right? And then Phyllis and Lenny could have done that with him. And that relationship would have still been there. It wouldn't have been forced, and we would have seen Sunny like living amongst his people, which is, I think, because they were so segregated, that's why people hated the story. And then we could have seen people still ostracizing Nina for the time that she kept him away, and her building a secret relationship with Sunny and encouraging him not to reconnect with his family. So like he could be like, okay, well, let me at least know my kids, or let me at least know Carly. And Nina could be like the one pulling some strings, like, no, hang out with me, right? Still would have been Nina being unforgivable, could have still gave us those stakes, but it wouldn't have been the same thing. And then with Sunny in town, but not taking over his territory, you could have had Jason and Carly playing out that same storyline of being like Carly being distraught. And then it would have actually been more, I think it would have been easier to accept them being together. You could have seen more storyline with them struggling. You could have seen Jason like comforting her over Sunny not being there and kind of not coming back. And they would have still needed to like protect Sunny, because even if he didn't have his memories, the five families would have been like, he's still a threat. And so yeah, that I think would have been a much better use of the time and of the storyline, and still giving them all of the things that they wanted. So my GH fanfic. Tell me what y'all think.
It's me clapping, slow clap, fast clap, all the claps. I have no notes. I would have much preferred to watch that story. And I think it's what this storyline is going to miss, because Sonny remembers who he is as he's going back to Port Charles, is that tension of like him interacting with people while he had amnesia. Like we only got to see that with Jack, which was hilarious, because like Sonny's like, I don't know shit, but I know I don't fuck with you. Which is like, yeah, that's right on. It's accurate.
Sonny and Jax is amazing to me.
The really intriguing part of that story was Ava. I'm a huge fan. Ava's my favorite, bottom line. And would have been really interesting to have Ava come across him not having his memories and being like, I'm going to help you. And yes, you can have the bar and all that good stuff, and having that interaction and having them actually get along, and him taking her at face value instead of having this anger at her over Morgan. That would have been interesting for me to see. Yeah, because I don't know, as it stands now, there's no way that Carly and Sonny can forgive Ava because of Morgan. And so to take that away and have Ava have a new even though she's kind of having a new relationship with Carly, I don't think that would ever happen with Sonny with his full memories unless they took that away.
I like that angle.
It's easy to forget with this kind of like set up storylines, because I was telling you, I mean I know a lot about GH now because like I went back and watched stuff I missed, because I stopped watching when Steve Burton was still Jason Morgan, and I came back at the exact same time Steve Burton came back, because Sandra was watching and she was telling me about it, and I was like, well, okay, I'll start. And it was the week that Steve Burton came back. And so if you started watching then, you actually don't know Mob Boss Ava. Like you would actually have to go back and like watch that to like remember why they hate Ava. Like the worst thing that she's actually done was the thing with Mike, like using him to get custody or like joint custody of Avery. But other than that, you don't really get a big sense of like, oh, Ava's kind of a mess. That's the scene where she had her people not had her people, but her people beat up Nicholas. You were like, oh yeah, I forgot. Ava Jerome's a little cray-cray. So I think that, yeah, I think that having some interaction with her and Sonny would have been interesting.
She almost went there when Julian was going through his crazy phase, and she was like, who do you want me to take care of? But he didn't have her do it. He didn't have her involved in his craziness, because she was ready to take someone out for Julian, but he looped her in too late. And so I mean, she's still in there a little bit, but they're having her kind of tamp that down. And almost like when Nicholas and her got together, they might have even gone there if Ryan was really really into it. They probably would have murdered Ryan right then and there. But for some reason they didn't have her go full Ava, which is crazy. But
she also was willing to take out Julian too there at the end of
right. Like you need to go.
Yeah.
Like she's like, no, you need to leave because I'm about to kill you right now because you're messing up my spot. So yeah, I love Ava. She's like a very sophisticated Faith for me.
Yes, actually.
Like a smarter, more mature Faith. Better.
Yeah. I never thought about her like that. Yeah, I actually really like that. How do y'all think they're gonna redeem Nina? Because one of the questions I keep asking is like, who's gonna be on her side? Like, who's gonna ground her? So like, you know what I'm saying? Because like when people do wild stuff, there's always like somebody who will like forgive them. So that's why how we ended up with like Elizabeth and Franco or whatever.
Right.
Like who was gonna be that grounding force for
I think it might, like, if depends on how this Sunny, Jason, Carly dynamic thing. I think it may actually be Sunny that redeems her. Because I think once he finds out what's going on with Carly and Jason, he's gonna have to turn to somebody. And it's either gonna be Phyllis or Nina. But I have a feeling because of the love that they have, that he might actually turn to her in some kind of way, be pissed and angry about it, but still do it. You know?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be Sunny. And more specifically, I was gonna say something much more obscene.
Say it. Go ahead.
Please say it.
It's gonna be Sunny salami
and that sauce.
That sauce.
Not the sauce.
I just want a scene where Trina comes up to Sunny like, yo, I'm glad you're back. No, it's messy. What about that sauce though?
What if Sunny goes legit and it's the sauce that he sells and like Jax is his investor?
Because you know he's a venture capitalist.
You know he's a venture capitalist.
I don't know if you know this, but I'm a venture capitalist.
Great, another reason to dislike Jax.
Right. But yeah,
You're
that would be a funny scene if Trina was like, yo, that sauce, man. Because it's like an inside joke. You know, when what really got to me was like when Maurice and Laura were talking and she's like, you know, I had that scene in the kitchen, you know, with the moths, and I was like, she said it. So I feel like there's going to be some sort of inside joke about the sauce. It's going to be brought up again. It's not going to be forgotten.
I want Jax to call him Smike. That's what I want. Okay, so before we close out, we always do like a behind the scenes or what are you saying that's like outside of the show. And one of the things that we wanted to talk about was this like thing on Twitter where they are trying to pit Jocelyn and Trina against each other, which I absolutely hate. But just curious to think like, you know, what is your take? How are you feeling about it? What are you seeing?
So saw this thread. Apparently someone was mad that there are fans who are trying to pit actually Jocelyn and Spencer together, which I guess would put Trina and Jocelyn in odds. But what was really key that someone was pointing out was that for some reason they want Trina to always play second fiddle to Joss. Like Joss is the teen and Trina is the, you know, happy black sidekick. And it shouldn't be that way because Trina is, I feel like we were talking about it last week. It's basically Trina and Spencer that are carrying the show. Trina, I feel, has much more of a dynamic personality on her own. She's not the daughter of a mob boss. She's not, you know, connected to Jax and Carly or anything. Trina on her own is compelling and she's a star. So she should be able to have her own relationship just like Joss has hers. And it should be about her and not as a sidekick to Jocelyn. As far as I'm concerned, it's Trina's world right now and everyone's orbiting around it. And so that's how it should be. But there's also that note when it comes to race. It's always been that, you know, Black women had to play the sidekick to, you know, their white counterpart. And that kind of dynamic needs to end. Not just because there's two dynamics. There's one is that Trina on her own is great and she doesn't need to be second fiddle to anyone, but there's also the race thing and the fact that, you know, we're not just Black women are compelling on our own. We don't need to be the sidekick to some other, you know, white person. So there's those two dynamics. And so I'm hoping the writers don't go there. I'm hoping that they continue to ship, you know, Spencer and Trina. And, you know, Jocelyn can be the happy sidekick or the fierce one like she was this week. But, you know, let her, you know, do her thing with Cameron. But, you know, it's Trina and Spence as far as I'm concerned.
Yep. Yeah, I'm over here taking really deep breaths because I'm getting my blood pressure is like skyrocketing over this. I think that, yeah, there are like a couple different like layers to this. And I think what you named, Tanya, is like right on. Especially when it comes to like Black women being leads, like romantic leads on soap operas, and being romantic leads with a like desirable white man. And these were like a lot of the same folks, you know, my understanding is that like it's a lot of the same folks who, when they were putting Trina and Cameron together, like were against that and were like, no, like it's Joss and Cameron, they belong together. And now that there's like a more kind of like desirable, you know, romantic lead, which, you know, no offense to Cam, but, you know, like Spencer's, you know, dramatic and handsome and rich and a prince, you know, like that's one of the reasons why I was excited. I wasn't expecting them to put Spencer and Trina together until that first scene. And then like I was just immediately like, yes, I'm here for it. I'm here for Princess Trina, without even really knowing how actually compelling the storyline would be. So I think one of the reasons why I've loved the storyline so much is that it is pushing against that norm in soaps, that Black women and like women of color be like only romantic leads when it's convenient, and not really given the super couple treatment the way that I think they're building up Trina and Spencer. You know, they have a long lead up. They have this kind of dynamic where they have very different and conflicting motivations. Like Trina is very motivated by like loyalty, her values. She has a really strong moral compass. Spencer doesn't even know what a moral compass is, and he's very, very like motivated by like revenge and his wounding. And their motivations are both really strong, and they're at direct conflict with their connection, which like is really strong. So they're kind of like wrestling that out, and that is super couple material right there. And so I think another piece of it is like I absolutely think that this like bringing up of like Joss and Spencer, especially by these like quote unquote soap opera influencers, is very like racially motivated, because like there's nothing on the page, like there's nothing on the canon, there's nothing that's actually being seen on screen that indicates that they're going to be together. Like actually everything indicates that they're not. They even went ahead and paired Joss off with Cam right as they were entering like Spencer onto the scene. And to me, that was very much an indication like, we heard y'all don't actually want a love triangle between Joss and Trina. You like their relationship as is. And I think like, what if Trina is actually like the love of Jocelyn's life right now, right? Like her best friend. And I'm not even doing the shit that I normally do where I'm trying to make people gay. I actually just saying like, you know, when you're 18 years old, like the love of your life sometimes is just your best friend. And I love that. It's like, I really love their connection. And I think if you were really a Joss fan, you wouldn't want the Joss and Spencer storyline, because it's also not interesting. Like, why, like I'm not a fan of like we've known each other our entire lives and now we're in love, especially for teenagers, because there's something about coming of age and like having that first big love where like you get to become someone new, right? Joss and Spencer are very much about like who, like contextualizing who they used to be, versus Trina and Spencer, who are very much like, what is the potential ahead as we enter into adulthood? Like, who are we going to become? So I would say that both the Joss and Spencer storyline, like that people are trying to push, which I really actually have faith that they're not going to do, at least not anytime soon. It's a soap opera. Of course, they're going to like explore that at some point, because they're both big legacy characters. They're going to be around for years. But like to do that now, not only is that racist, it's boring, which is often what racist storylines are. So that's my hot take.
Come through, English major. Breaking down all of the, you know, the characterizations, breaking down the prose. You better do all of that. I have really a hard time with fandom because of stuff like this. Like I keep forgetting that ABC is owned by Disney, so I'm like, damn, is Trina about to be a Disney princess? Uh, that's like my first thing. And then the other thing is just like how hard it is to be like a person of color and then a woman of color and then a Black woman who consumes like media because of how racist things are. That a lot of this stuff is meant to be like an escape for us, that we're like, I watch soap operas for the mess. I watch it for the over the top, the escapism, the all of that. And so to then be brought back down to earth by people saying like, oh yeah, this Black girl is not worthy of a love interest, of a storyline. And then there was like somebody who even said like, oh, well, the only reason people like her is because she's Black. First of all, that's not true. And second of all, what about it? If I only liked her because she was Black, who cares? But that's not the case. This is a very talented young lady who has been very compelling on screen, who has built relationships where you wouldn't think they worked. Like, who would have ever thought, you know, before you saw them together, that a Trina and an Ava would have ever been something that was compelling or worked? But it was because the strength of the characters. Even the relationship between Joss and Trina happens because the actresses are very strong together. Same thing with like her relationship, like she really brings the best out of the actor who plays Cameron. And so the racism that like brings that, like I just feel like a very protective auntie of Cindy Michaela right now. Like I will pull up on y'all. Like let this little Black girl live. Let her have a fun, loving, cutesy storyline. And also some people are really too grown to be getting into this. Like these are 18-year-olds. These are children who legitimately like to take selfies with each other, who seem to be friends off screen, who seem to be protective of each other off screen. If you saw, like there was a shift in the way people talked about Esme's character online because the other like teens were like, yeah, she's a mess on screen, but we love her off screen. You know what I'm saying? Like it was like a shift in the way folks talked about her, and being like, oh yeah, I want to know more about this messiness, and not in this like way that was like really mean because she was coming in between the ship. So yeah, I just cut it out, knock it off. Like these are kids. Stop being racist. But these are the same folks who were then mad that Trina had the conversation with Cameron about race and policing, the same folks who you know, just are mad about everything and stay mad and keep Cindy Michaela's name out your mouth because you know she got a truck full of Sprina shipping aunties who will pull up.
And let's not forget the history. Let's go back to GH history. Nicholas was engaged to Trina's aunt. Remember Gia Campbell, who is Marcus Taggart's sister? And so that is an interesting dynamic. It's not like above beyond comprehension that the Cassadines swing chocolate, because they do. And so I don't know why these people are shocked, because they love it. And so yeah, it can happen, and it's gonna happen, and they need to just get over it.
I think that it's really more to your point about her not being a sidekick. It's like, how dare this Black girl have more than what we think this white girl should have? And they're doing it to them because Eden McCoy is like, like I like posted like something she put with like that Nene like video. She's like, how I get in it? See how they be doing me? Like that's how Eden McCoy is. Like, do not put me in this mess. I actually like ship Sprina. I actually like the way like her and Cindy Michaela hype each other up. Like it's a very sweet like on screen and off screen like dynamic that you know just shows that like these 18-year-olds, these Gen Zers are smarter than some of us, and like get it in a way that we don't. And again, racist people need to keep Cindy Michaela's name out their mouth.
Right. Absolutely. And like we're on the, I would say, you know, I don't know what the exact age breakdown is of you know, GH fans, but I would assume even though we are no longer young people, we are on the younger edge. And if we're too grown to be like messing with like 18-year-olds drama, like off screen, right? Like whatever, on screen, it's lovely to watch like a cute little teen romance, because at one point we were all teens, right? And we can remember what that was like. But like, if I'm too grown, y'all too grown.
Yeah.
We said what we said. Any closeout predictions for next week before we go?
Prediction. The obvious, Carly and Jason were in another limo. Hoping Anna and Valentine end up in Nixon Falls somewhere or the other and see Sunny alive, because I think that'll be an interesting reaction. But I also hope that they find some clue to Peter, but I doubt it. I think, yeah, like you said, Sandra, I think Peter's going to be around for a minute. Nothing else that I'm particularly interested in. I do want to see some Sabrina scenes, but there's nothing else that I'm really looking forward to other than those.
I think that Valentine and Anna will find Peter, but he will unfortunately live. I think that there will be some confrontation, but he's going to escape somehow. I think we will see Sunny in Port Charles at the end of the week. I don't think we'll see him at the beginning. Obviously, he has more drama to play out. And he might show up in Port Charles, but I don't think we're going to see any of the confrontations that we want to see, at least until the end of the week. I also think we're going to see the beginnings of a Spinelli, Maxie, Austen love triangle. Which I have mixed feelings about. I'm an old school like Spixie fan, although I wasn't a fan of the relationship at the end. I don't think a lot of people were, because it got pretty old, but I would be interested to see them revisit that as adults and co-parents, and I think they have a nice chemistry, and I'm just happy to see Kirsten Storms in scene with different screen partners than she's been with. Although I do really like her in BLQ. And I actually didn't like hate I know like some people weren't sure about the Maxie Austen stuff. Like I just think Roger Howarth is just the most watchable person ever, even though like we don't know a lot about his character yet. And I liked like the small interactions between him and Maxie. So I think my pause on that is just like, I don't want Spinelli and Maxie's relationship to be a prop for another Maxie relationship, because that's already happened before. So I'm just not into it, but whatever. I think that's going to start to build. And this is a random prediction: Epiphany and Taggart as a couple. Maybe. I think we're going to see Taggart again soon. We just saw Epiphany, which makes me feel like they're going to give her something meatier to do. And I felt a vibe between them when she helped him fake his death. So I'm just, again, I just like to put things out into the universe. And then finally, I think Spencer is going to try to apologize to Trina this week. He already tried to send that text before Esme intervened. And also Joss was like, bitch, you better apologize to my girl. So I think he's going to try. I don't think it's going to go well. And I think that he is going to incriminate himself in some way while he's apologizing, because right now Trina is just sniffing out Esme, but it's only a matter of time before she figures out it's Spencer. And I think it's like something very juicy and delicious about Spencer being the one to give himself away to Trina, because Trina is like his Achilles heel. Trina is always the reason why he fucks up his plans, because he just is like so like heart eye emoji over her. So that's my prediction with Spencer and Trina.
I don't really have much beyond that. I do think that sadly we will see a consummation of Jason and Carly. So sorry, y'all. All love to our Charlie listeners. That's just none of us. But yeah, I think it's gonna be like something really dramatic where like Sonny's on his way and Carly and Jason like can't be reached because they're with each other, and then that happens. So that's my prediction for there. I think that we're going to start seeing the groundwork being laid for Chase and BLQ. And so I think that if it's not next week, I think the week after we will see some of that because we actually haven't seen Chase in a while. And now that Jordan is gone, we're gonna need him to be back on the police force. And, yeah, I think those are my only additional predictions to what y'all said.
Shout out to Brianna Henry. She's beautiful. I wish they did a center part on her hair, but I loved her.
Controversial.
It is like I felt like I just needed to split that up because it just didn't feel right. And I saw her with her hair with the center part, and she looked beautiful. I was just like, why do they always have this side part on her? Why?
I also really like the blazers with her too.
Yeah,
make her look like she could actually be TJ's mom.
Yeah,
she's very young.
But she's beautiful, and I wish her luck in all of her endeavors. And also shout out to the Emmys tonight and Mandalorian winning an Emmy. All right, that's it.
We all love Star Wars, so we should talk about that at some point. All right, well, thank y'all for, I guess in advance for joining us again. We'll be back next week Sunday with your GH Sunday shift. Send us some love in the comments, follow us on Twitter. We have a link tree, all the things. Tell your friends about us, and thanks for being here with us. Say bye, y'all.
Justice for Billy Miller.